All right, and we do want to get more context on this developing situation. Standing by is Dr. Alon Burstein and Hal Kempfer. As always, good to see the both of you. I want to start with you, Alon. We just heard a little bit about Hezbollah's new leader. What more do we need to know about him?
It was good to see you, Austin, and good to see you, Hal. Naim Qassem is a very, very interesting and important figure. He has been the deputy leader of Hezbollah, the deputy of Hassan Nasrallah, since essentially the mid-1990s when the group reorganized itself. Hassan Nasrallah himself became the leader in 1992 after the assassination of the previous leader, Abbas Mousavi. Naim Qassem is very, very committed. He's almost like the Ayman Zawahiri to bin Laden in the sense of the group structure. He is the chief ideologue. He is the person who developed the ideology of the group. He is the one who gave it a lot of religious authority when it came to the group running into Lebanese politics. In that sense, he is entirely committed to the group's cause in as much, if not more, than Hassan Nasrallah. At the same time, as was said in the report, he does not have the same public persona. He's much more of a scholar. He has written books. He's written memoirs. He's written the history of the organization. He's much more of a scholar and a learned person. He has not participated in active fighting, very different than Hassan Nasrallah and other members who grew up in the military wing. He grew up much more in the political wing. What that'll mean for the group, we obviously still need to see which direction he's going to take it. He is likely to be very, very dependent on Iran, much like Hassan Nasrallah was, possibly in this case even more, because he doesn't have that same political position within Lebanon. At the same time, he's taking responsibility when the group is possibly in the worst situation it has been, at least with regards to internal politics in Lebanon and to its strength. He's already been quoted several times as alluding to the possibility that maybe Hezbollah will accept a ceasefire that will not be tied to the Gaza Strip, something Nasrallah did not agree to. So he's taking responsibility in a very interesting time. What he's actually going to go in the directions we don't know fully because we don't actually know that much about him in a leadership role. But this is where he's coming into the organization right now and has to maneuver all these different pressures that he's facing.
So, Hal, why do they even announce these guys at this point? We heard Gallant's soundbite there. If we're thinking from Hezbollah's perspective, doesn't that just put an even bigger target on these guys?
Well, Austin, from a personal security perspective, I'm sure the best thing would be he doesn't get announced, but they have a large following. It's a large group, along with being a paramilitary force, a terrorist force. They also are a political force within Lebanon. They have to have a recognized leader in that role. And Naim Qassem, he fills that role. He is a politician, not a traditional Western politician by any means, but he is a politician. He's an ideologue, just like Alon said. The big thing, though, is what's interesting is he does not have a military background. He's not a combatant. He's not a combat leader. That's very different from certainly Nasrallah, but very different from Sufadin, who was killed in a strike and was the heir apparent to Nasrallah. So in some ways, he may not be the best named leader of Hezbollah from Israel's perspective. Now, it's to be seen what he's going to do in that role. But certainly Yoav Gallant has made it very clear that whatever their intent, that he is not off the target list. All right. But then I would say he's always been on the target list. In fact, just about everybody he sees on a daily basis is on that target list. So that really hasn't changed much. But they're at a very delicate time in the negotiations. There's some very serious negotiations for a Lebanese or Lebanon ceasefire at this point. And he could play a role in that. In fact, in many ways, the ball is very much in Hezbollah's court to figure out if they're going to accept the terms and take what's on the table. So he may not be the worst leader they have in that regard. In fact, in many ways, someone from the military wing of Hezbollah would probably be a worse person to talk to or to deal with in that regard.
So last time I was talking with both of you, we were discussing Israel's retaliation against Iran as live details were coming out about it on Friday. Satellite imagery has come out showing some of the damage. Alon, what have we learned about what was hit?
So when it comes to the strategic thinking and with regards to what was hit and what was targeted, Hal probably can say a lot more about that than me when it comes to the military perspective. I'll say that the from Israel's side, what appears to have been the main aspiration was to first of all have a very very symbolic hit, very reminiscent of what happened in Isfahan back in April. The airstrikes, seemingly in the first wave, I think we were talking between the first wave and the second wave, seemingly the first wave targeted all the S-300 air defense capabilities of Iran. That not only is a tactical and strategic advantage that you remove the air defenses, it's also very symbolic. When the great nemesis of Iran, sends its airstrikes to take out the air defenses, leaving Iran completely vulnerable, specifically around Tehran. That's sending a message. That's saying, if we have to escalate further, now we've removed all of your defense barriers that might have stopped us from doing essentially whatever we wanted to do. That was apparently in the first wave. The second wave, also to some extent symbolic and also strategic, seemed to target the ballistic either missile sites that were used to produce missiles, or the important facilities that are associated with developing fuel, again, all related to ballistic missiles. And that's also very symbolic because Iran's attack that occurred on October 1st was almost entirely ballistic missiles. So, in that sense, there were two messages being sent. One, Israel could do essentially whatever it wants in Iran. But the second is also within the framework of closing off possibly this round of escalation. You attacked with ballistic missiles. We targeted back the ballistic missile, what you need for more ballistic missiles.
Anything to add, Hal, about what was targeted?
Well, I think Alon said it quite well. I mean, they went in there, and certainly we talked about this on the air before the strikes took place. Anytime you do a strike mission or strike missions of this sort, you want to take out their air defense. Now, if you're going in one and done, you suppress it, so you can do your mission, get out of there. But if you really want to leave the door open and make a statement, you destroy. It's not SEAD, it's DEAD, destruction of enemy air defense. And what they did was they took out their most advanced air defense systems, all of them, all the S-300, they're gone. They wiped it out, took out the radars, they took out the missiles. I have to tell you, it was quite the strike planning that made that happen. And of course, if you're sitting in Iran, you're saying, well, our most advanced air defense system is now gone. They took out a lot of their other air defense assets along with that. Air defense asset in critical locations, critical corridors that open the door for follow-on strikes. And that's a message that goes right to the highest level, certainly of the IRGC, but also right to the highest levels of the Iranian regime in total, not just Khamenei, but everybody around him, saying, look, if you want to escalate this one more, the door is wide open. And they did some rather interesting things. There's an analytical technique been used a lot in the U.S. Since 9/11, more well known. It's a Carver. I won't get into what the acronym stands for, but one of the things you look for with that, and it's been used for critical infrastructure assessment, but way back when I learned it, we looked at it for targeting purposes. And one of the things we look at is not just the criticality, but the recoverability. How fast can you rebuild or put something back online? That's when they went after the missiles. They went after not just the missiles, not just the missile manufacturing, but they went after the solid propellant manufacturing or production capability. And they took out some of those key elements of machinery, mixers, commonly used in the mining industry. But these mixers are estimated it's going to take at least a year for Iran to get these things back online. That is a huge gap in their capability to produce more ballistic missiles. These are missiles that can not only be used by Iran to aim at Israel or Iran's proxies in the region to aim at Israel or wherever else they're planning on aiming, but also missiles that can't be sent to Russia. This is a really interesting, to use the term precise, as it's been used many times by the IDF in describing this. The precision on these strikes is really stunning in what they've done. and the thought process, the analytical process on how they took them out and where they took them out. In fact, one of them was not a nuclear site, but it was a place in the past where there have been reports. IEA had said there was uranium elements there that were discovered. So it was a site associated with the nuclear program. Went in there and hit it in such a way to send a message directly to the IRGC, directly to Khomeini to say, look, we can hit any of your sites. We can take them out. By the way, this is one of your most sensitive sites, most well-defended site. And we hit it, and we hit it in a way that we didn't cross that line, if you will, of saying we're going after nuclear sites, but we sure as heck showed that we have the capability to do it. That's what these satellite photos show. By the way, I just want to say something, and this is just as an intelligence officer. I am just amazed with the quality of commercial imagery. I won't get into details, but I got to tell you, way back when, that imagery was pretty sensitive stuff. You would definitely not see it on television or anywhere else. And to see the quality of commercial imagery today and to see how it's being used to build not just government perception, not just the leaders of the Western world's perception, but also to develop public perception of how effective these strikes are. There's a certain psychological element to that with the world opinion that really cannot be understated.
So, Alon, the big question coming next then would be, what has Iran said about this retaliation? Does it feel like they'll have to respond militarily?
So we're still seeing the internal debate within Iran's political arena. We're still seeing, first of all, on the diplomatic channels, Iran has it's filed a complaint with the United Nations. It has made very, very public that it sees this as a violation of its sovereignty and reserves the right to respond. You know, as the usual sentences, whenever it sees fit, however it sees fit, almost word for word what Israel said after the missile strike against Israel on October 1st. So officially, they are saying that they reserve the right to respond and will respond whenever they see fit. Unofficially, under the table, meanwhile, there's the same tension that we've seen within Iran's political system when it comes to the two different factions that are debating how and where to take this war. The faction that is being more led by the new president of Iran and the moderate side, they would like to focus internally. Iran is busy dealing with its economy. It's busy dealing with crippling sanctions that it has on it from a variety of different sources. It is trying to open up new markets with Russia, as Hal said, and looking at various different avenues there. They also don't know what's going to be after the U.S. elections, if there's a new administration or the same administration. Either way, it spells a different thing for the way their economy is developing. They're not interested in more adventures. Again, these missiles, it helps build them up regionally, possibly with different actors in the Middle East. But the retaliations are also crippling for them internally, and they're very scared there'll be a retaliation towards, oil fields or things like that. Then you also have the supreme leader. Sorry, one more sentence. You also have the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, and that side of the government that is pushing for a harsher response because they see this also as part of stabilizing their strengths in the region vis-a-vis other actors.
We'll end it with you, Hal. Could this be the end of this chapter of direct fighting between Iran and Israel? What's your feel?
It could be a prolonged pause. Let me just say that. I think I'd be presumptuous to say it will be the end. There are certain factors in play that just aren't going to change anytime soon. Part of the regime's sustainment, if you will, in Iran, their survival is don't go to war with Israel and lose. Their sustainment is they have to have some sort of confrontation with Israel. Otherwise, they have difficulty explaining why they do what they do. They need that confrontation just to sustain themselves ideologically. However, I think it'll be a prolonged pause. One of the things I should also mention, it opened the door for a lot of other strikes, but also there were strikes that were in and around, not destroying oil infrastructure, but so close to critical oil infrastructure that it made it very clear that if this goes the next step, Israel not only might be inclined to take that infrastructure out, Israel would not even be slowed down in taking that infrastructure out. And that literally, as you talk about these two factions, the more moderate elected president, and moderate is a very relative term in Iranian political dialect, but but a more moderate president that wants to push trade, wants to open up the economy more, wants to do all these things that are not part of the military confrontation with Israel. He's definitely looking at this and saying, looking at what's come out of this, it says they could literally take us offline. They could destroy our revenue base for how the regime supports itself, and they could do it within a night or 2 nights, and we would be stuck. That is got to be playing a huge role in their perception of the next step. And so I do see a long pause before they try something else.
All right, Dr. Alon Burstein, he's a Tufts University visiting assistant professor and Israel Institute fellow. You can also check out his regular YouTube uploads where he gives highlights of the war. He does a great job of doing that on his personal YouTube channel. Hal Kempfer, as always, our trusty national security analyst. You can check him out on the Strat podcast as well. Good to see you both. Have a good night.